In today's video, we're going to be going through and discussing Hermaeus Mora's Daedric Shrine quest in the Elder Scrolls 4, Oblivion. There are a few requirements that we need to meet in order to even begin this quest. For starters, we must be at least level 20. Secondly, we would have had to have at least started the main quest, Blood of the Daedra, which is right after Brumagate. We had to have completed every single other Daedric Shrine quest. Not including Hermaeus Mora's, there are 14 other Daedric Shrines. And for 2 out of those 14 quests, namely Boethia and Clavicus Vile, you also need to be level 20. So it's safe to say that it might take a little bit before you get to Hermaeus Mora's. However, once all of the prerequisites are taken care of, the second we decide for our character to sleep and get some rest, we're approached by an unexpected visitor.
You are summoned by the Lord Hermaeus Mora. He sees your path, as he sees all things. Make your way to his shrine.
This mysterious stranger, Castaflavus, approaches us and tells us that Hermaeus Mora has summoned us.
Go to his shrine, see what lies ahead.
He offers no further dialogue. Even more eerie, Castaflavus, after delivering his message, doesn't move or go anywhere. Usually, after delivering their piece, messengers tend to wander off and go about the rest of their day, but not Castaflavus. Popping open our journal, we see that the Hermaeus Mora quest is actually active right now. This is unique in the sense that normally we have to go out of our way to get the quest from the shrine. We see that this Daedric shrine is in the northwestern part of the province, and our nearest discovered location is Echo Cave. We begin to travel west on an unmarked path. The path in of itself is relatively simple, however, we do face quite a lot of powerful enemies on the way. For example, we hit a bridge that had a relatively low overhead. Our horse was unable to get by, and we had attracted the attention of multiple mountain lions. Within mere seconds after dismounting, the mountain lions had actually killed our horse, and we were left to go on foot. Not long after the deadly altercation, a bandit meets us halfway on the bridge and begins attacking us. She's no problem to take out, and we continue onwards. Along the way, we encounter some ogres, which one at a time are not very tricky to deal with, but after running by a nearby Oblivion gate, as well as a brown bear, the fight in of itself becomes pretty hairy. The Oblivion spawn come to join the fight, the bear puts up some pretty impressive attacks, and the ogre's health is quite mighty. However, once all of our fights are over with, the pathway eventually gets to a point where it splits off. One direction keeps heading west while the other twists north. If we take the one heading north and follow our compass, we'll pretty quickly arrive at the shrine of Hermaeus Mora. As is pretty standard with the Daedric shrines, there are 3 worshippers as well as the statue of the deity. The worshippers are Brucius Longus, Narasa Addis, and Regir. Something else that's quite unique about this quest is that we don't actually have to speak with any of the worshippers in order to begin it. In fact, none of them even offer any interesting or quest-related dialogue. The only 2 that have something unique but not quite interesting to say are Regir and Andis.
You better have the right offering or you're wasting your time here.
Daedra lords demand offerings and services. If you won't do as you're told, just forget about it.
Interactions aside, because we've already met the requirements for this quest, we can simply approach the statue of Hermaeus Mora and engage with it.
I see you have served my brethren, and now you come to serve me. I am Hermaeus Mora. Past, present, and future are as one to me. My followers seek to perform a divination. For this, they need souls. One of each of the sentient races. You provide these. I give you a spell to trap these souls. Return to me when you have finished. When you do, I will further your journey on your true path.
With that, we receive a quest update. Hermaeus Mora's quest for us is actually a lot simpler than other Daedric quests we've been given. All we have to do is capture the soul from every playable race within the game. Hermaeus Mora even gives us a special soul gem for the task, quite aptly named Hermaeus Mora's soul gem. He also gave us a spell called Mora's Soul Trap, which casts a soul trap spell for up to 120 seconds on any target. Just for some extra dialogue, we speak with Regir.
The Lord Hermaeus has set you on a new path. Follow it and return to him.
Now, the fun part begins. Quite obviously, you can find any of the 10 races all across Cyrodiil and the Shivering Isles. For our very first soul claim, we traveled to the alien ruin called Sardavar Lead. Here, it was sort of out of good fortune that we found an Altmer. We cast the Mora's soul trap on her and slew her pretty quickly. As soon as you successfully capture a new soul for Hermaeus Mora, you get a quest update telling you such. Now, according to the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages, there are some pretty easy ways we can capture all 10 souls pretty quickly. For starters, if you have yet to initiate the arena questline, if you were to begin it right now, you would fight every single race within the first 3 ranks of competing. Another great tactic would include finding vampire dungeons in old forts, ruins, and caves. Most vampire nests include NPCs from 8 of the 10 races, making a quick dungeon crawl likely worth our time. Referencing back to our journey, we were able to walk to a nearby encampment called Sweetwater Camp and find a Dunmer bandit bowman to take the life of. We turn to the bearing of east and begin to walk along the road. Here, we're lucky enough that a Nord marauder spots us from the nearby Fort Elysia. Together, with the help of a patrolling Imperial Legion officer, we successfully take his life and claim our 3rd victim. Now, something that never quite crossed my mind before, but as I was doing this quest made a lot of sense, is the fact that only certain races will take up specific NPC roles. For example, in Fort Elysia with the Marauders, we're likely to come across Altmer battle mages, Argonian archers, Imperial archers and warlords, Nord marauders, and Orc marauders. And knowing that we needed most of these, we ventured a little bit into the fort and found an Orc right off the bat. The Orc fought with his Nordic companion, but in the end we were able to kill both of them and claim the soul of our 4th race. Leaving Fort Elysia for now, we continued our tour. Crossing over the nearby bridge, we were hopeful in that we would find our 5th race. Towards the end of it, our hopes became reality when we crossed paths with a Khajiit highwayman. He approached and began speaking with us.
I used to think you were a hero, a holy knight and all that. I guess I should have known better.
Confused on what's supposed to happen next, we just asked him about rumors.
It's our natural barriers that keep us safe, mostly. Mountain borders north and east, open sea to the west, and bogs and rainforest to south.
Usually the bandit highwayman threatens us for our money, but this time things were a little more passive. So it's here we decided to be the aggressor, cast Mora's spell trap, and begin hacking away. Within no time, we claimed the soul of the 5th race. From here, we traveled to another random camp in order to see who we could encounter. Although there were no NPCs directly here, just across a nearby bridge we encountered 2 bandits. One of them was a Khajiit, in which we didn't need, but the other was a Redguard, in which we did need. We cast Mora's soul trap, hacked and slashed away at him, until finally he was killed and we secured our 6th soul. Some other great tactics detailed by the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages includes that of traveling to the previous Daedric shrines and killing the worshippers there. In total, there would be 42 different worshippers, and from there we would have no problem seeking out 10 of the different races. Another excellent tactic would be traveling to Rockmilk Cave. Rockmilk Cave is a part of Mazoga's questline, and in there we find marauders as well as blackbow bandits battling each other. All 10 races of Tamriel can be included in either faction, so there's a very good chance that we can find every single one of them in there. As for our next target, we find Alwyn at Trollcandle Camp. Alwyn is a Bosmer, and killing her marks the 7th race. She's very easy to take down, however, what we didn't realize is that we need her for the skill training quest. So reloading our save, we make our way into the alien ruin of Vilverin. We take down 2 bandits, which are part of some of the races in which we've already secured souls for. However, the 3rd one happens to be a Bosmer bandit bowman. So after taking him down and making up for our Alwyn kill, we have only 3 races left. We decide to try out the vampire trick and travel to Bloodcrust Cavern. However, the part of Bloodcrust Cavern that we weren't aware of is that the vampires that we cleared out don't respawn back in. So abandoning that idea, we fast travel over over to Fort Telemann in Blackwood. Fort Telemann is occupied by necromancers. The three races we have left are Argonians, Imperials, and Bretons, the last of which tend to belong to the necromancer faction. The very first necromancer we spotted inside of Fort Telemann happened to be one, and with her death, we secured our 8th soul. For the Argonian soul, the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages points out Veillon Cave as being a very good place to find some. Veillon Cave is actually home to Argonian tribesmen, meaning that the very first room we entered, we managed to find one. We cast Mora's soul trap, and upon slaying the Argonian, we secured our 9th soul. With only one mark left, all we had to do was find an Imperial. Believe it or not, even though Cyrodiil is their homeland, antagonistic Imperial NPCs are somewhat difficult to come by. They can come in the forms of marauders, hackdirt brethren, and knights/priests of order. We decided to see if there were any stragglers left behind at Hackdirt. Unfortunately, there were none, so we had to choose an alternate option. We traveled over to Fort Such in hopes of finding marauders. However, we only came across NPCs from the Dark Brotherhood quest, Bad Medicine, and unfortunately, none of these NPCs ended up being an Imperial. This is where we got the idea to fast travel back to Fort Elysia, in which we found our Orc and Nord soul, and upon entering into the second zone, we managed to find an Imperial Marauder Archer. After his defeat and a successful soul capture, we receive a quest update that now it's time to return back to Hermaeus Mora's shrine. As mentioned before, the best in-game legal ways to do this quest are by joining and fighting in the early ranks of the arena, traveling to Rock Milk Cave and intercepting the battle, or by finding a large vampire nest and clearing it out. The best in-game illegal way of doing it would be by traveling to the other Daedric shrines and killing the worshippers. Of course, you can also just go on a murder spree around the towns and settlements, and the really beautiful part about this quest is that there's truly no rush while doing it. With the other Daedric Shrine quests, you're given a specific time, place, and task. With this one, we're simply told to collect 10 different souls. So in theory, we could go throughout the game and capture them at our leisure. Returning back to Hermaeus Mora's shrine, we approach the statue and interact with it.
You have served me well, and I am pleased. I give you this, the Oghma Infinium. Knowledge given by me to Xerxes is recorded within. Read it and gain knowledge of yourself. Go now, learn, and remember.
With that, we hand over Hermaeus Mora's soul gem, and in return receive a mysterious book called the Oghma Infinium. We quickly speak with Regier for some dialogue.
Blessed are you who walks his true path. Enlightened are you who learns of himself.
Popping open our inventory, we scroll over to the Oghma Infinium under books and attempt to read it. This is where we're faced with a choice. We can either read from the path of steel, the path of shadow, or the path of spirit. If we're indecisive, which we are, we can also choose the option of not reading anything. So what exactly happens when we read the 3 paths? All 3 paths add a +10 to 2 attributes and to 3 skills. So for example, the path of steel adds buffs to the attributes of speed and strength, and the skills of blade, blunt, and heavy armor. The path of shadow adds buffs to the attributes of agility and speed, and then adds buffs to the skills of light armor, security, and sneak. Then finally, the path of spirit increases the attributes of intelligence and willpower, and then also increases the skills of conjuration, destruction, and restoration. Obviously, it's best to increase the attributes and skills of your choice. However, if you were to select the one that aligns with your major skills, you could increase your character's overall level significantly, and it's even possible to use the Oghma Infinium to raise your attributes above level 100. Now, as for which reading we chose, I fear that we might have made a mistake. We definitely weren't going to pick the path of shadow, so it was between the path of steel and the path of spirit. Being fairly content with our strength attribute and our blade and heavy armor skill, we decided to get some buffs with our magicka, and we read the path of spirit. At this point with our character, the only thing that can make them more overpowered is by really concentrating, learning, and growing our magicka. This was definitely a calculated move when it came to boosting our intelligence and willpower, which, by my standards, were pretty subpar. As for the skills, we definitely needed some big points in restoration, which is one of our major skills. We'd like to get better at destruction, and we don't really care too much for conjuration. That's the area that I'm worried I made the wrong call in. Our blade and blunt skill levels are incredibly high, and a +10 in each would have severely helped the class we're trying to play. However, we don't really need the buffs for speed and strength, and on the other hand, we do need the buffs in intelligence and willpower, as well as in restoration, but could probably have a pretty easy time boosting destruction and conjuration on our own, given that they're still at the novice level. Definitely a tricky choice to make, and I'd love to know your thoughts down below on which one you would have chosen. Now let's switch the conversation over to the Oghma Infinium and the Daedric prince Hermaeus Mora. Reading directly from the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages, the lore page on Hermaeus Mora says, Hermaeus Mora is a Daedric prince whose sphere is forbidden knowledge, hidden shoals, whirlpools, and sudden squalls, destiny, and the scrying of the tides of fate, weaving his way through the past and future as read in the stars and heavens, and in whose dominion are the treasures of knowledge and memory. His curiosity is insatiable, and he seeks all knowledge, and not to change but to observe, so that all becomes known. He weeps cold tears at the plague of ignorance, where knowledge is forsaken out of fear of misuse, and seeks to enlighten all to the mysteries that have ever and will ever exist. This benevolence presented by his followers may be a facade, as Mora is said to hoard his knowledge and give nothing away for free. Like all Daedric princes, he's not to be trifled with, but he is subtler than most of his ilk and ensnares mortals with his secrets. He may seem cruel at times, but he's not irrational. Mora hoards and safeguards any knowledge that could potentially endanger reality. Reading further, always lurking, he is the void and the ever-seeing eyes. Mora has been called the wisest of the Daedric princes, with a mind as old as Tamriel and a body of slime. Though he describes himself as the riddle unsolvable, the door unopenable, the book unreadable, the question unanswerable. Unlike most princes, Hermaeus Mora typically does not take on a humanoid form, manifesting instead as black clouds of varied, grotesque assemblages of eyes, tentacles, and claws, or a featureless purple vortex known as the Wretched Abyss, though according to some sources, he occasionally took on a form resembling that of a mortal. He speaks with a thundering bray. And the final bit on Mora, he resides everywhere and nowhere, but takes glee in tormenting mortals from his realm in Oblivion, the plane called Apocrypha, an endless library where the infinite pages of countless books containing all forbidden knowledge are found. Each book sports a black cover without a title, and the realm is reported to be haunted by ghosts forever searching for knowledge. His servants include Daedra such as Seekers, Lurkers, and Watchers, but he is known to have mortal worshippers too. Sailors and seafaring folk refer to Hermaeus Mora as the Tide King, master of the seas, and one whose tentacles rise from the deep, a being who lurks in the oceans and pulls vessels down into the abyss. Similarly, the Khajiit Mora controls the tides and lives in a vast library under the sea. Now we switch the conversation over to the Oghma Infinium. Interestingly, the Infinium actually shares the same text to the Mysterium Xarxes. During his dialogue towards us, Mora also name drops the Xarxes, likely showing a connection between both pieces of literature. Reading the Oghma Infinium's lore page on the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages, the Oghma Infinium, also known as the Tome of Power, the Librum of Knowledge, and the Book That Knows, is an ancient tome of knowledge and an artifact of great power. It was written by Xarxes, the scribe of Auriel, who had been granted the knowledge within by Hermaeus Mora. The name of the tome comes from Oghma, the wife of Xarxes, whom he created from his favorite moments in history. The knowledge within the tome grants the reader access to the artifact's energy, which can be manipulated to achieve near demigod abilities. The reader is instantly bombarded with a knowledge intake that could hemorrhage the brains of lesser mortals. The paths of steel, shadow, and spirit are the three main sections of the tome. Because of the hazards it poses to its reader, the book was classified as a tract perilous. Once the Oghma Infinium is used, it disappears from its owner's possession. The Oghma Infinium makes an appearance in the Elder Scrolls 2, Daggerfall, the Elder Scrolls 4, Oblivion, the Elder Scrolls 5, Skyrim, and ESO. Gracchus was determined to use the Oghma Infinium to aid the invasion and allow the Empire to crush the Aldmeri Dominion. However, Javid withdrew military support once he learned of Gracchus's apparent inactivity, and Hermaeus Mora decided that he was not worthy to continue possessing the tome. The vestige then entered the Vile Manse, and Mora promised the Oghma Infinium as a reward for defeating Gracchus. However, the prince was not willing to risk the vestige against the tome's secrets, and snatched it away upon Gracchus's death. It was duly returned to its home in Apocrypha, and the discourse Amaranthan was offered in its stead. During the events of Daggerfall, just before the events of the Warp in the West, an agent of the Blades in the Elec Bay area was sent by Hermaeus Mora to assassinate a noble who had displeased the prince. In return, Mora promised the Oghma Infinium, which was in the possession of one of his worshippers. The agent succeeded, and the tome passed hands. We know of the events that took place in Oblivion, and as for the events that took place in Skyrim, it's said that after the Third Era, the Infinium was put away inside of a Dwemer lockbox. Hermaeus Mora, being displeased with this action, manipulated a follower by the name of Septimus Cygnus. Cygnus believed the lockbox contained the heart of Lorkhan. Cygnus was told by Mora that he would need the knowledge of an Elder Scroll to divine the way to open the lockbox. Cygnus was an expert on Elder Scrolls, and when the last Dragonborn came looking for one in the 4th Era, year 201, Cygnus pointed them towards Blackreach. The last Dragonborn found the Elder Scroll within the Tower of Mizark, taking it and inscribing its knowledge onto a blank Dwemer lexicon. Cygnus used the knowledge to discover how to open the lockbox. As the Dwemer were all but extinct, Cygnus theorized that he could inject himself with the blood of all surviving elves to trick the lock. Mora then appeared to the Dragonborn in the form of a wretched abyss and revealed that Cygnus was no longer of use to him due to his broken mind. The Dragonborn retrieved samples of blood from Altmer, Bosmer, Dunmer, Falmer, and Orcs. Cygnus succeeded in opening the lock, only to discover that it contained the Oghma Infinium. He was turned to dust attempting to read it. The last Dragonborn took the tome and was contacted by Mora, who was pleased that his knowledge would again be put to use. So with that, thus officially ends Hermaeus Mora's Daedric Shrine quest. Moreover, that wraps up all of the Daedric Shrine quests in the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. Stay tuned for the complete compilation, which you may or may not be watching this on, and until next time, keep on adventuring.